Hey everyone, it's Sitrie. Today I wanted to share with you a tip about color that has helped my paintings get so much faster and so much more realistic. When you think about color, there are typically three different measurements. There's the hue, which is going around the color wheel to different colors. There's saturation, which is the intensity of that color versus gray. And then there's the lightness or the darkness of that color. When an artist is painting a character, for example, they usually think in terms of two out of those three. They're usually concerned about their saturation and their lightness and darkness. And quite often they forget about the hue. Hue is so important. So let me just show you some examples of how this works. The color that you're picking really depends on the light that's all around it. Not just on the subject itself, but on the entire scene that subject is in. This is called ambient light. So for example, I have a photo here of a forest scene. We have our main light source, and that's the sun, coming from here. And then we have a more indirect light source, which is just the blue light coming from the sky, up here, coming straight down. And these light rays will bounce off of everything in the area. So this blue light might bounce off this tree trunk and bounce off, and this light might bounce off of some leaves and bounce off, and when they bounce off, they adopt some of the color of the object that they bounced from. So for example, if some of this yellow light comes down and bounces against one of these green leaves, then the resulting light that bounces off is going to be a mixture of the yellow and the green, bouncing maybe this way or this way or this way, depending on the angle of the object and the angle of the light. So if you look at the shadows in this piece, for example, on the path, the local color, which is the color that something is in a vacuum without any light affecting it, the local color is probably some kind of brown. When it's in the shade and the sunlight is not directly hitting it, it doesn't just become a darker brown. This area is still affected by all of the light rays that are bouncing around indirectly. So this pathway is still getting a whole lot of blue from the sky, for example. Here's another path photo. Down here, we're getting mostly the blue light from the sky. In here, we're getting a little bit more greenish, where some of these light rays may have bounced off of tree leaves or the grass, and they're bouncing around and affecting this area, whereas maybe they're not affecting this area so much. In here, where the sunlight hits, the sunlight is always going to be stronger than any ambient light around it, so you don't see those greens and blues because the sunlight just overpowers it completely. So let's take this concept and bring it over into portraits. So here's an example of a portrait taken of someone in a bluish sort of environment. It looks like maybe there's a lake behind her. The light source is coming from this direction, and it's hitting her face around this area, and this area, some of this area in here. When you look in the shadows, that is not receiving the direct light. It's still receiving ambient light where this light source has bounced around and come back. Maybe some of it bounced around over here and came back like this, or bounced around behind her over here and came back like this. And when these things bounce back, they get a little bit of the blue environment back in the color. And as you notice, the skin tones on this side of her face end up just a little bit more blue as a result. Here's another one where the light is coming from pretty much the same angle that the camera is. So it's coming straight from us, and it's hitting his face around this area and in this kind of area here. And if you notice, the colors of the walls around him are kind of greenish, yellowish, and as the light hits this and bounces back, this area of the skin gets just a little bit of a greenish hue. If you were to change the background color of this piece, this person's skin tones would no longer look right with it. So if we were to change this to a really bright purple, the greenish tones in his skin suddenly clash with that purple. He doesn't really look like he belongs in that environment, at least not like he did with the green one. So what happens if there's no direct light at all? In this example, none of the direct light is hitting this person's face. The light is coming from up here, coming straight down, hitting the rim of the hat, and a little bit of the shoulder where the hat's not covering. Where the main light is not hitting, what you're seeing is all of the bounced light from all the other objects in the scene. So there's a little bit of nature and some green colors that are bouncing onto this white shirt. And there's a little bit of warmth being bounced onto the face from this hat. And there's even a little bit of pink as the light hits this flower and comes back up. Do you see it right here? There's just a little bit of pink there. When you look at this piece, you know that the clothing she's wearing is white. But if you were to actually select the color, it's a very dark blue. And if you select from here, it's a totally different color in the green area. Because most likely, there's a green object around here where the light is coming from the top, hitting this object, bouncing off, and landing on the shirt like this. You can even see this on the flowers. So there's direct light hitting right here, but then down here, here's some reflected light that's green, so there must be some green object down here where the light is coming down and being reflected back up. And you can see it here, and here, and here. So what does that mean for your art? Well, there's a couple of big takeaways. The first one is decide your environment before you paint your character. It's really important. This is something that I think a lot of artists skip over because they're so excited to paint their character and less excited to paint the background that they just want to get in and start picking colors and putting them down. So let's put this into practice. By the way, this line art was created by Lauren Walsh. She's a fantastic painter. I'll leave a link to her social media in the description below. It'll be really tempting to put down flat colors that are generic like this. This is something that a lot of artists will skip to because they're so excited to paint their character, which is completely understandable. But what I'd like you to take away from this video is that going this route will take more time for a less realistic result. So instead, let's think about ambient light in this piece. The first thing you should do is consider the environment. So let's say that this character is in front of just a regular blue sky. So I'm going to change this background layer to be a little bit more bluish. Next, decide where the light is coming from in your piece. So in this case, I'm going to have my main highlight be coming from here. And I'm going to start adding some skin tones. And by painting very lightly with the brush, I can get a mix of the skin color that I chose from here and the blue that's already on this canvas. Here's my skin color, and here's this mix in the middle. And I can use these two colors to create just a basic rendering of the highlights and shadows on this face. So it's pretty subtle right now, but you can still tell that the skin tone over here, where the light is hitting, is already different than the skin tone over here. Notice I'm only playing with hue right now, not value. The shadow tones aren't actually darker yet. So I've boosted the contrast just a little bit, which makes this difference easier to see. You can see that where the sunlight is hitting is definitely a different hue than the shadow over here that's receiving reflected blue light. Let's not forget to add some red in the midtones. For anyone who has seen me paint before on Twitch or in Discord, you'll know I have a thing about red. Always need more red, especially in portraits. It helps to make the portrait come alive. I'll most likely have a longer video specifically about red in the future, so if you're interested, hit the subscribe button to be notified when that comes out. We're just going to focus on the face for today's video, but the same principles hold true for the rest of the piece as well. Keep in mind not only the main light, but also the reflected or ambient light from the environment around them. So you can see, even just like this, with just a few different passes of some different colors, just how much the hue makes a difference in the realism of the piece. Here's a comparison if you had just done flat colors versus this one with more hue variation. You can do this with almost any color of background. So let's try this again with green. First, I'll pick a skin tone. I'll start painting it lightly over the green so I get a little bit of a gradient between the color I picked and the color that already exists. Notice I haven't gone back to the color wheel at all. I haven't picked any other color than the first one, and already I have an entire mixture between this color, the one I picked, this color, which is in my background, and everything in between. So once again, not a lot of time spent, but these colors already look like they belong in a green environment, which is the goal. Don't forget your red in the midtones, of course. Notice again that in the shadows, which is this side of the face, there's more of a green tone because any light that is hitting any objects over here, in this side of the canvas, are bouncing back and landing anywhere along here that would be more pointed toward the shadow than the light. You'll know you've done this right if you try to change the background color and it no longer looks anything close to what you wanted. For example, here's our green skin tones, and if we try this with the blue background, it just looks wrong. It doesn't look like it belongs. And in the same way, here are the blue skin tones that we had, and if we put these against a green background, they don't belong either. This is good. This means you painted your skin tones with the environment in mind. And given that these two environments had very different colors, the blue and the green, they really shouldn't be working together. And that's why it's so important to decide your environment first. And there you have it. I hope this was helpful. I know learning this made a huge difference for me in my work. So if you want to share any work that you've made using these tips, I would love to see them. You can reach me on Discord or on Twitter, on Instagram. I'll leave links to all of those in the description below. And if this video was helpful for you, if you could leave it a like, that helps me a lot. Also subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you next time.